Today we're going to be looking at another one of Gentle Giant's Jumbo Vintage Kenner figures. Of course, this is part of their surprisingly extensive line of action figures that they've taken from the original 3 3/4 inch size and blown them way up to 12-inch scale. And this particular one here was a Premier Guild exclusive, meaning that it wasn't more broadly available. You had to have joined their Premier Guild, and basically you choose it as a reward. I mean, I say reward because you're still paying for it, right? You pay for your membership, and then you would get like a choice of various things that you could get as your reward, and this was one of the ones that I chose. In any case, because it is an exclusive, it's probably a little bit less common than some of the ones that you could just pick up at, you know, a comic shop or online or whatever. But it's been sitting here in my collection, or more specifically in my basement, doing nothing for months and months. This was actually the 2018 Premier Guild reward, and I think I didn't get it until sometime in 2019, but here we are smack dab in the, well, not even the middle anymore of 2020, and I haven't really done anything with it, so I thought it was high time that I took a look at it. And it also ties in with some other things I kind of wanted to do on the channel later, so I thought we'd go ahead and take a look at this real quick. You can see, just like all the other ones in the line, it comes in a large sort of glossy plastic package that mimics the design of the original vintage card backs there. But obviously, if you've ever seen a vintage card, or even just a regular modern action figure, you'll notice that the figure takes up a larger portion of the package than is normal. You know, on a real vintage card, probably the figure would be like that big. But that would, you know, if they tried to recreate that same exact proportion, the card would end up being gigantic. So I can understand them doing it this way. Now I have, you may be able to see a little sort of cell phone charger wedged underneath the bottom of the bubble here, because if you don't do something like that, it will not stand up straight, which is a little bit of a problem. I don't know, you know, if you're wanting to display it like this, you're going to want to get either some kind of a stand or something to wedge underneath it, as I have, or just, you know, have it leaning back against something. But that doesn't look as good, I feel, so just something to be aware of. Now, these packages, as I've said in the past, are nice in the sense that they're clamshells that just open up, and then on the inside you have the sort of pristine cardboard card back there, which you can take out and even frame or something. And obviously you can get the figure out as well without causing any damage, and you can return it without any problem. So I do appreciate that. And what we're going to do right now, in fact, is take him out of the package as soon as we turn it around and see what's on the back. So I mentioned a second ago that they have a surprisingly extensive line of these figures, and that's definitely true. If you look at the list here, it goes all the way up to 58, which is Luke in the Stormtrooper outfit. I'm trying to see if this, yeah, this does include Bib Fortuna himself on this graphic, but I think there are actually some other ones, not a lot, but a few others that have come out since this as well. So we're talking roughly 60 figures. However, since Gentle Giant was acquired by another company, and, you know, they seem to have gone under some restructuring and things like that, since that time, there's been relatively little progress made with this line. I've mentioned this many times on the channel and on my site, but they had originally, around about 2014 or 2015, announced that they were going to make a Jumbo Jabba with this line to go along with the Salacious Crumb that they had already released as also as a Premier Guild exclusive, as a kind of a holiday version, which I've reviewed on the channel up here quite some time ago. But since that time, since about 5 years ago, there has been essentially radio silence, and I do not expect that product to actually appear, although I'd be happy to be wrong about that. So, yeah, a little disappointing from that standpoint, especially, you know, people buying something like Bib Fortuna probably want to have him to go with a Jabba. I would just hazard a guess. But let's go ahead and open them up, and we'll compare them to the actual vintage figure and see how they did. So here's good old Bib out of the package. A couple things to note. Now, as with all of these figures, while you can take them out of the package and put them back in without really damaging things, you do have to cut some tape to do that, so, you know, or at least remove it. And it's not really possible to do it without being able to tell that it's been opened. Also, you have to undo some twisty ties and things like that. So, you know, if it matters to you that it's 100% mint in package, you can't really take it out. But for me, I don't really care. I will say also, here is the backer card there that I mentioned. This right here is a little area where it's been rubbed raw from the twisty tie that was around his legs, just sort of rubbing up against the cardboard in the package, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's not really visible normally. I noticed right away when I got him out, he seems a little bit heavier and more substantial than a lot of these figures that I've looked at in the past. I mean, if you look at him, this is one of those kind of figures that has the sculpted skirt, you know, so he's got these huge legs, and that contributes to that feeling. I think he's definitely got some weight to him. I also noticed that this robe of his it feels pretty nice, actually. It feels almost like a suede, but not quite. Whereas if we bring out the actual vintage figure, first of all, let's look at the scale difference there. Look at that. That's a pretty stark comparison there. Now, if you compare the actual vintage figure in its minute details with this one, you're going to see some differences. And that's basically true with all of these figures in the line. They're not exact copies, although they are, I'm sure, made, at least starting from scans of the vintage figure. A lot of people kind of got upset about that when it came out, that there were, you know, reworking the sculpts and things. But I think, you know, having done some work with 3D models of scans of vintage figures and things like that, I think it may be unavoidable if you want it to look good at this blown up scale. But if we were to look at the robe on the vintage figure, you can tell it's really, it feels like more of a velour feel than anything. So actually, this feels better. And I don't know, it seems like a reasonable equivalent, although on mine anyway, the coloring is different. I don't know. There are all sorts of variations with vintage figures, and it's possible, of course, that mine has kind of changed color over the years too. Who knows? They both come with his staff, which of course never actually appeared in the films. I had a lot of trouble getting the staff into his hand. The Jumbo vintage figures, unlike the actual vintage figures, are made out of a plastic that's really relatively hard. And if you try to, you know, put an accessory in their hand, it really doesn't bend much at all, as opposed to these guys where it's not really too hard to fit something in there. I ended up scraping off some of the paint on his thumb. I don't know if you can see that. It's the minor thing. Trying to get that in there, just sort of, you know, and also some of the paint on the staff itself, it looks like. So that's a little disappointing that they, you know, they don't really have a solution, it seems, that would allow you to use the accessory without damaging it. The other thing that struck me right away was that his leku, his tentacles here, are made out of a different material than the rest of the head, and they've been kind of, you know, merged in using the same paint color, but they're definitely a rubber. They're made out of rubber, whereas the head is hard plastic, or, you know, the same as the body. That does allow you to move them around like this, you see. In the package, as you may have noticed, this one was kind of over like that, and the other one I think was kind of maybe around like that. So you can kind of pose them to some degree. I usually associate the vintage Bib Fortuna as having his leku kind of around like this, which is the way mine is. And, you know, with the vintage figure, there is some rubberiness there too, but the head is all made out of one piece. It's all made out of the same material, and it's a little difficult really to, you can do it, but if you wanted to arrange them differently, you know, I guess you can do it. I just never really tried. Anyway, this definitely feels different. It's softer. It's got a mold line going down the length of it too, which is maybe a little bit suboptimal, but I suppose it's better than having it be in hard plastic, and, you know, otherwise that would kind of get in the way and be difficult to deal with, I think. The other thing, of course, with Bib is that in addition to this soft goods cloak, he's got kind of a, I don't know what you'd even call this, but it looks like a piece of armor attached to his chest here. And what they've done is just sort of made that out of a rubbery material, which is, I believe, what the vintage figure also has. There we are. He's dropped his staff. But yeah, this is also basically rubber. So that seems accurate enough to me. I think I'm going to try and take his robe off and just see what he looks like without it. You know, if you're spend any time on eBay searching for vintage action figures, you'll see a lot of naked bibs out there without the armor or the robe. It's not really a very good looking figure without those, in my opinion. But I am kind of interested to see, first of all, whether it's possible to do it easily, and also what he looks like without them on there. So let's just give it a shot. Although I guess that means I'm going to have to take this thing out of his hand now. That's a little bit too bad. Let's just see how it looks. So we'll get his Leku out of the way there. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about with this. Can you hear that sound? I don't like it. There we go. But look at the, see, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a scrape right there and a scrape on his hand. Not great. Oh yeah, this is super easy to remove. So that's good news, I guess. Although I'm not sure, again, how many people would actually want to display him with it off. He's got, I've never even really paid attention to what this looks like on the vintage figure, but I assume this is accurate. Got kind of a belt buckle almost there that you can bend to remove that. And there he is. He looks so so thin without his stuff on, doesn't he? He looks like a wet dog or something. All right. That's pretty much all I wanted to do today, was just take a quick look at this guy. We can look at his feet here. It says, actually 2019, Lucasfilm licensing, trademark, 2019, made in China. And then the vintage figure, of course, had a 1983 copyright on the leg there. So that is that. I'm going to be adding this guy to my slowly growing collection of jumbo vintage Kenner figures. Maybe I should do a video about all of them as a group at some point. That might be kind of cool. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.